Hope you guys are doing well. So I was all set to record this on the back porch, and then just as I'm about to press record, we get a tornado warning. So we moved it to inside. But today I just wanted to talk about some key things to keep in mind when it comes to finding and choosing a good prosthetist. Because I'm sure we have all had the experience where we have, gone to a medical professional and been less than satisfied and left frustrated. I know I had the experience when bringing my daughter to a specialist that our pediatrician recommended. First of all, I had to drive an hour and a half away, had to wait an hour before even seeing the doctor. And when the doctor finally did come in, didn't listen to any of my questions, didn't listen to any of my concerns. And before I can even finish asking my question, he was already inching towards the door. Unfortunately, prosthetics aren't any different. On one end, you have some really great prosthetists who are passionate about what they do and really care for their patients and want to see them succeed. And then on the other hand, you have some prosthetists that not only do shoddy work, but also they just don't care about their patients, and their main concern is the bottom line. So we're just going to go over some things that I think is important to keep in mind when it comes to choosing a prosthetist. We're going to go over 5 things, but one of the first things I want to touch on is just knowing and understanding that it is your choice. Ultimately, it is your choice who you see for your prosthetic care. And I know for some of you guys that might be, duh, of course it's my choice. But I know some patients who stayed with a prosthetist because that's who their physician referred them to, even though they weren't having a great experience. That's just who they stuck with because that's just how they thought it was. One of the patients that I'm currently caring for, that was her situation. She had a leg made from a provider and didn't have the best experience. She needed a new socket made, and she's a long-term care patient in a facility, and so therapy and the patient, they just stayed with that prosthetist because that's who she had been going to probably about 4 months after they got that new socket. And therapy calls me up because they are just so beyond frustrated, and you will not believe just how bad this was. One of their main complaints is that, first of all, and I know this was kind of in the midst of COVID, when COVID was first starting, but regardless, she's a above knee amputee and the knee mechanism kept breaking. And he would not come out to the facility to see her. He had them mail it to the clinic so he could fix it and then mail it back. When he mailed it back, knee was going this way and the foot was going this way. At that point, they called me and they were like, can you please just come in and take a look and see what you can do? Went to see, and so there was the foot that needed to be rotated. There was the knee that needed to be fixed. She said it was too heavy. It was digging into her groin, and the top of the front of the socket was digging into her abdomen when she would sit. And it was a pin suspension, and she had problems getting it on. So there was a lot to address, and it just got worse. So these top 2 here are what she previously had. This little hole here was actually drilled so that she would be able, so therapy would be able to see where the pin was going into to try and help it make easier donning. You can see, the socket's this way, and you can kind of see on here how the foot is turned out. The other thing is they had her in a flexion plate, which there was no need for her to have a flexion plate. All that did was add extra weight. This knee here is what kept breaking, and this locking mechanism kept breaking numerous times. You can also see where they kind of folded down this part, but it was still digging into her abdomen when she was sitting. And so these bottom pictures are what we did to help her out. Went ahead and got her, because she was in a really thin 1-ply liner. So I put her in a thicker liner, and that helped take up some of that extra volume. We also added a lanyard for lanyard suspension versus the pin suspension. And with the lanyard suspension, she was able to don it all by herself. And that was one of therapy's goals. She also had this manual locking knee from the previous prosthesis. So I don't even know why, because this prosthesis, this first one, wasn't even that old. And this knee is actually lighter. So I went ahead and swapped out that other one, put in her old one, got it set up on the socket, took out that flexion plate that was completely unnecessary, and she was much happier. What pissed me off though was when I was taking this all apart and getting the flexion plate out of there and switching out the knees. This is what I found. So these are the screws that they used to hold the socket and the knee together. They're all mismatched. One of them looks really old, way more than 4 months. And one of them is so short, it wasn't even screwing into the plate inside the socket. That's a sign of a bad prosthetist. All that to say, if you're having a bad experience, and this kind of goes into my first point, is not only is it your choice and that you have the freedom to change providers if you feel like you're not getting quality care, find somebody that you feel comfortable with and that you can trust, because you're going to be seeing this person for a while, especially in the beginning, especially if you're a new amputee. You're going to be seeing them for eval appointments, casting, check socket fitting appointments, delivery appointments, and follow-up appointments after that. You really want to be able to find someone you can feel comfortable with talking to and trust to help make decisions and recommendations when it comes to your final prosthesis, and someone that you can trust has your best interest at heart and really cares about your success. Again, similar story to the patient that we were just looking at. I had a patient that was in a skilled nursing facility. Therapy asked me to look at because he had a prosthesis that was previously done, was never able to get it fitting quite right, was never really able to use it real well. The patient reported back to me, it just meant so much to him that I would take the time to answer his questions, listen to his past pains and frustrations, and just really sit and just talk with him and get to know him a little bit. And, you know, he was sharing with me that with a previous prosthesis, you know, the prosthetist had remade it several times, and it got to the point where the prosthetist told him, "I'm sorry, but we're running out of money and I can't remake it again. This is the best it's gonna get." That's a bad prosthetist. Really find someone that you can connect with, that you feel comfortable with, and that you can trust. Trust does take a little while to build up, but I mean, you know, usually in the first time meeting someone, you can kind of get a sense if your guys are going to get along or not. Next point, look for someone who is an active listener, who's going to listen to your pains, listen to your frustrations, listen to your questions, and not just throw those to the wayside or make you feel like you don't have a voice or that you're not important. And that is one thing that I hear so often from patients that have had a previous prosthetic experience. One of my patients, she's a transfemoral as well, and young, active lady. There's nothing indicating that she would not do great with a prosthesis, but she said she had a prosthesis for years and just never used it because she would try to tell the prosthetist, like, "Hey, it hurts here." It was like digging up into her groin area. She's like, "Hey, it's hurting here. It feels a little too big." And she was also trying to tell him that it felt too long, and he kept dismissing her, you know, saying, "No, the length was correct. She just has to get used to the socket." That's a bad prosthetist. If they're not going to listen to your concerns and just dismiss them, that's a bad prosthetist. And so you want to find someone who is a active listener. The next thing is convenience of office location and if they offer mobile visits. Don't go to a particular office just because the location's convenient. Yes, you are going to be seeing them often, especially in the beginning, especially if you're a new amputee. Your office visits are probably going to be a little bit more regular until you get all set, and then they'll get more spread out. You know, at least find an office that is somewhat convenient to you, again, that you feel comfortable with, and ask if they have mobile visits, because I have a lot of patients that trying to go to someone's office is very inconvenient. And with COVID, I've been finding that more offices are providing mobile visits. And you guys know I do all mobile visits. My patients, my clients, they don't have to worry about coming to an office. I can go to them wherever they're at. On the other hand though, and Not all clinics are like this, but there are some clinics that have been able to do this really well, where it's more of a community atmosphere. So if that's something that you're looking for, trying to find a place where you can just kind of gather and hang out with other amputees. Not all offices do it, and not all offices do it well, but I have seen some offices that have done it really well, because that might be something that's important to you, to be able to go to an office and be able to talk with and get to know other amputees. Another thing I want to talk about, find someone that is incorporating a team approach. And what I mean by that is, see if you can find a prosthetist who is working closely with PTs and OTs, or at least know a good 1 or 2 PTs that they can call, that they know that they're proficient in working with amputees, that they have the experience working with amputees, because that is one thing that can make a big difference. One of my recent patients, she had a previous prosthesis that the prosthetist just delivered to her at home, but didn't give her much training, didn't work with her that much with it. I think she did have some physical therapy come out to the house, but there wasn't any communication between the prosthetist and the physical therapist, and so there was no team approach there at all. And so this patient was left with a prosthesis, but no education, no training, no support, and so she ended up never really using that prosthesis. One of the at-home therapists that I work closely with, she has a patient right now that's bilateral transtibial patient, and she was having a really hard time getting the prosthetist to come out to adjust, and she's like, I'll even work around my schedule so we can coordinate, and it was just a difficulty trying to make that happen. So if you can, try and find a prosthetist that works closely with therapists and other members of the rehab team, and that's just gonna be one more aspect that helps set you up for success. And the last thing I want to talk about, call up the office, set up to have an interview. I'm sure you could hop online and find interview type questions, and some of those aren't probably the most helpful questions, because they're going to be things like, are you ABC certified? How long have you been working in the field after residency? Have you worked with amputees of, my amputation level, my age, my demographic, how many, what's your success rate? Just understand that I've seen work from people fresh out of residency, and that have been great. And I've seen horrendous work from practitioners who have been in the field for, 15, 20 plus years, and I'm not saying these aren't bad questions to ask. Just know that even if they check mark all these boxes, that isn't going to necessarily guarantee you a positive outcome. I think what all those questions are mainly getting at is, kind of the question behind all those questions are these things that we've been talking about. Are they reputable? Is their facility reputable? And can you trust them? Do they care about you? Do they care for amputees? Do they want to see them be successful? And are they going to do what it takes to make sure that they are successful? But definitely ask them those questions. Ask to set up an interview. That's what I did when we were trying to find a pediatrician. I asked for recommendations from friends in the area because I didn't know. And then with the recommendations that I got, I requested time to interview them and ask them questions and get to know them a little bit. So definitely do that and see if that would be someone that you would want to choose and trust for your prosthetic care. And that is one of the main red flags. If you call to set up a time to talk with them and they're kind of like, well, we don't really do that. We'd have to set up to do an eval and, get orders from your doctor. If they start going that route, that's a red flag. Most good, decent prosthetists are going to be more than happy to take, 20, 30 minutes out of their day to sit with you and talk with you and answer your questions. So just to recap real quick, understand it's your choice when it comes to your prosthetic care, and it is your choice who your provider is. Look for someone you can relate to, that you're comfortable with, that you can trust. Number 2, look for someone who is an active listener. Number 3, look for someone that is either a convenient location or a location that you're willing to travel to, and ask if they do have mobile visits if that's important to you, or if they have more of a community type setting in their office if that's important to you. Number 4, find someone who is incorporating a team approach. And lastly, number 5, find someone who is open to having an interview with you, meet with them, ask those questions, get to know them, and let me know, down in the comments, what has been your journey when it comes to finding a prosthetist? Are there any other recommendations you would give, or other things that are important to you when it comes to finding a prosthetist? Let me know down below. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.